So to continue what I had said on the first take of this was about how we find our spirit guides. That's really one of the things that the biggest questions I get with people who are just starting out on their spiritual journey, or they've been on it for a while and then they want to go a little bit deeper. Usually people who disconnect from what their former version of what God was supposed to be to them, where it did not resonate. Most people who are leaning off of the God idea usually lean toward spirit guides. Now, I do know we spoke about ancestors before, which is also a great source of, spiritual, information, safety, just everything, just basically, your spiritual connection in general. So we did speak about ancestors. We did speak a little bit about guides, but this one will be about spirit guides. So what really determines a spirit guide? Some of us determine spirit guides as people we have things in common with, people from the past. Usually we wouldn't consider people who are currently living to be spirit guides, because they'd be more like teachers, because they're still physically in our presence, still present in our physical space, opposed to people who have passed on, given their life story, lessons they've learned, how they've changed themselves for the better and how they've changed the world for the better, would be considered a spirit guide. People stepping away from Christianity in particular, people have found that Jesus is more of a spirit guide rather than an actual Messiah to free the entire world, that he really caters to people who resonate with him and with his energy and what his purpose is. Not necessarily everyone would resonate with Jesus Christ in particular. So he would be considered, a spirit guide, for the most part, from what I've been told by a lot of my, clients, and some friends who have stepped away from Christianity in particular, that he's more of a spirit guide rather than, a rule meister, more like a teacher, rather than someone that would condemn you to hell, or something. So most religious icons, if you were not religious, would be considered, a spirit guide. Muhammad, Buddha, Vishnu, Kali Ma. Kali Ma is actually one of the most popular spirit guides throughout a lot of spiritual and Hindu spirituality practices, especially those who do not, put a label on it. Kali Ma tends to be a very, very popular spirit guide, given the love and also the rage, the power, and also the humble, the humility of Kali Ma. Definitely gives a push-pull, idea of karma with their energy. Spirit guides would also be like Hecate, people who worship astrology and a lot of Greek, Norse, and pagan, and Celtic beliefs would be more geared toward like Pluto. A lot of people who do believe in Greek teachings, I have found actually a lot of males, men, spiritual men, are very drawn to Pluto. Pluto rules Scorpio, and off the top of my head, I can't really remember which other sign they rule at the moment, but Pluto, Poseidon, there's a lot of Greek spirit guides that are very, very, still very popular today among Norse, Celtic, and pagan beliefs. Now, do all spirit guides have to actually be like God or deity people? No. So, if you were to move away from deities, if you move away from God and Kali Ma and the people that we generally worship, we can go as far as to people in the past, people who have existed in the past. Not necessarily a spirit guide does have to be an all positive, person. They can also be, obviously themselves, because we are all, we are living with a unique nature. So there is something about all of us that we have to offer, once we pass on. We are all going to be an ancestor to somebody one day. So because we hold and we have a value to someone who is seeking our talents, abilities, and strength or whatever. Moving on to past living people, people would say like Gandhi would be their spirit guide. He was all about peace, making a difference, a change, definitely being very disciplined, and understanding his enemy, understanding the enemy inside of himself, understanding really consciousness on a grander scale. I do know Gandhi did exercise mass consciousness. So people would consider Gandhi to be be their spirit guide, especially people who are looking for obviously peace and change. Non-violent. Change. Some people say, Martin Luther King would be their spirit guide. And these beliefs are because, it's not the body, that we are worshiping, or it's not the body that we are admiring. It's really the energy that cohabits, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, or whatever. It's that the person and the energy inside of that person is what we most resonate with. Even women during the suffrage times, people have told me Ann Paul is her spirit guide, because of, having a very strong female figure, resonates with a lot of people. And I know that sounds very, unorthodox in spiritual communities where it's like, oh, we only, cater to things like gods and, in super important people who've made a dent in this world. You can have any type of spirit guide. Your ancestors can be your spirit guides. And even moving on to spirit animals. For those of us who are spiritual, who study Chinese astrology. Now, Chinese astrology is literally a horse of another color. And it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever discovered, literally, like just anywhere. I am a very strong believer in Chinese astrology, to just have a really good idea of how people are governed by the stars, and by nature at the same time. So Chinese astrology definitely indicates and implies that our spirit, guides are actual spirit animals. The nature of these animals that are assigned, which I did do a whole class on Chinese astrology, which is on my YouTube page, that these animals and their nature are, we are governed by their nature. And it does show us how we are one, living at the same time. If you were to have an example, I would say people who were born the year of the dragon, in particular, right? My late father was born the year of the dragon, and my daughter was actually born the year of the dragon. And the similarities are, in fact, very frightening. That they are very strong-willed people. They are very successful people. They are really good at understanding and basically reading the room. Everywhere they go, they are considerate people. They are extremely passionate people. So that means that they don't necessarily take no for an answer. They are considered the best salesmen of the Chinese zodiac. If you need a car to be sold, if you need a house to be sold, if you need an idea to be sold, a dragon is who you're going to ask for. They don't take no for an answer. They don't force. However, they are really good at persuading people. Just as an example. So people would consider the dragon, right, to be their spirit animal, to link up, with Chinese astrology, and then to study the nature of the dragon in general. This is also in, mythology, Chinese mythology, of, the big dragons that, they supposedly used to exist, opposed to the kimono dragon, which still exists in nature, which has also been linked to being a relative of this huge, larger dragon, which in every culture says existed at some point. which is a mystery in science, where that they could have possibly been the first dinosaurs, fire breathing dinosaurs. So the nature of the Komodo dragon is pretty much the same. That's kind of how they dominate their territory. There is no to them. They are not really afraid of any other animal given their size. They are surprisingly confident animals. Even up against a larger animal, a Komodo dragon will still definitely try to fight and defend its territory as any other animal. However, if you were to compare it to the bunny, so to speak, that was the year I was born. I was born under the bunny, where we get confident up until a point, and then the fact that we know that we have really strong legs to run away, we tend to run away more than we confront serious issues. And then when you go down the scale of other animals and so on and so on and so on, you'll see how we're living in the year of the tiger, and tiger nature and tiger people tend to live up to how they are described in Chinese folklore. So spirit animals, spirituality has already been, discovered, by Chinese and Asian Middle Eastern culture. That is how they also navigate, connecting with spirit, connecting with, others, being able to then also govern their societies a little bit better, and just understanding one another, in their home. I mean, to be honest with you, in my house, I have the year of the horse in my house, the year of the pig in my house, the dragon in my house, and the year of the bunny in my house. So we have 3 farm animals and a dragon. And let's face it, my daughter is the scariest one in our home. She is the most forceful one. So according to, if those animals were living together, it would just be precisely the way it is in my house. So, you might want to look that up. You should ask yourself, what is your Chinese zodiac sign, before we get too far off of topic here. So yeah, so spirit animals are not limited to basically any animal. I mean, people are very, they're connected to owls, and creatures of the night, creatures of the daytime, healing creatures, crawling creatures, flying creatures. People are really, connected to crows, that symbolize death, moving on from death, accepting your darkness, finding the darkness in others and seeing the beauty of darkness, and so on and so on. People who are connected to bears, you just never can put limits on what a spirit guide could be. Just like speaking with ancestors, animals, planets, and astrology, a lot of people find a lot of identification in astrology, not just with their zodiac, but I did mention the planets as well. The movements of Saturn, the movements of Jupiter, and the nature of those planets. For those of you who dig scientifically into these things, you can find a spiritual connection to them. Like the hot environment, of Venus. That it's ruled by Libra and Taurus. Being very charming, being very, physically, oriented, and making sure the looks are always on point, about fire, passion, love, and justice. I don't see it as a coincidence. Definitely comment if you do. If you believe there's a separation between, spirituality and science. This is another topic to actually ask about that, because science and spirituality, aren't exactly best friends. So, we would have to really debate whether this, is something you agree with or not. But this is something I agree with. That's why I have a podcast. So, comment if you agree or not. The last thing I would talk about, with spirit guides is how often do you connect with them, or do you connect with them only when you call on them, or, are they always around? People do confirm that their spirit guides are always around, and most people assume the same type of life as their spirit guides. They feel as though they're connected, or saying like, well, that's going to be my destiny too. I'm going to do the same thing as Gandhi or Martin Luther King, or as Anne Paul. They find those similarities, but so people most of the time feel as though their spirit guides are always with them. However, there are others who will debate and say, you know what, no, my spirit guides are only invoked when I need them, on a need to need basis, where it's like I don't need to feel the wrath of Kalima when I'm in my workspace where things are going well. It's only the times when I need justice in court, or just get back at my ex or something like that. When I want to invoke karma. Kalima is really kind of like placed on hold or just waiting in the wings. However, always protecting me, always guiding me. But I control when my spirit guides can in fact intervene in my life. So you can really argue that whether that's a thing or not. I mean, it is a debatable thing. I guess it would depend on the person, or what is the true science to when spirit guides are activated, or even when ancestors are activated. Are they activated constantly in your life, or do you have is connection just connection no matter what? It's kind of like if you fall without calling them, you won't fall, or you won't fall as hard, or whichever. So just comment below and let me know what you think. So I hope you guys, got something out of this podcast. So this was about spirit guides, and just giving a general about it. I will go deeper into this later on in the year. So I, comment, debate, see what this is about, and have those conversations. So once again, it's Christina from Karma's Eye Psychic LLC on Universal Spirit Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. I will talk to you next week. Bye, my lovies.